Hey, beautiful souls, welcome back to Soul Stories. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to join our family. Stay with us, because a new love story is about to begin. The dust of the high plains was a constant companion, a fine red powder that settled in the lines of Garrett's face and in the quiet corners of his soul. For 10 years, since Sarah and little Daniel were taken by the fever, dust and silence had been his only family. His ranch was a testament to his grief, a sprawling, meticulously maintained prison of solitude. Every fence post was straight, every head of cattle accounted for, every sunrise met with the same hollow ache in his chest. He was mending a split-rail fence, the rhythmic thud of his hammer the only sound besides the whisper of the wind through the tall grass, when he felt it. A shift in the air, a presence. Cole's hand froze mid-swing, his other resting instinctively on the worn grip of the cold peacemaker at his hip. He'd survived this long by trusting the prickle on his neck that warned of cougars and rustlers alike. He rose slowly, turning his back to the fence. A rider sat on a pinto pony at the crest of the low hill that marked the edge of his property. The silhouette was slight, poised against the vast, unforgiving blue of the sky. Not a cowboy, not a soldier. The figure wore buckskin leggings and a simple tunic, a single eagle feather tied in the long black hair that fell like a sheet of polished jet down their back. Cole's eyes narrowed. He'd had dealings with the Apache, mostly tense, respectful distances kept. This was different. This was a direct approach. He stood his ground, a silent, weathered statue of a man, and waited. The rider urged the pony forward, not with a kick, but a gentle press of the knees. The horse moved with a fluid grace that spoke of a lifetime of partnership. As they drew closer, Cole saw the rider was a woman. Her face was a sculpture of high cheekbones and a strong jaw, her skin the color of rich, sun-warmed earth. But it was her eyes that snared him. They were dark, intelligent, and held a startling, unnerving familiarity. She halted the pinto a dozen feet away, its hooves making no sound on the dusty ground. She surveyed him, her gaze taking in the premature silver at his temples, the permanent furrow between his brows, the way his shoulders were set as if bracing for a blow that had landed a decade ago and never stopped landing. "Remember me, cowboy?" Her voice was low and clear, the English words shaped with a slight musical accent. Cole's mind, a place he usually kept locked and orderly, became a maelstrom of dust devils. He saw a flash of memory, so old and buried he'd thought it long turned to stone. A winter of brutal cold, a small shape huddled against a rock outcropping, thin and shivering. The glint of yellow eyes in the twilight, a cornered cougar, starving and bold. He'd fired a shot not at the cat, but into the rock beside it. The crack of the rifle, the shriek of the animal as it fled. And then, the girl. Barely a child, her face smudged with dirt and tears, her eyes wide with a terror that was slowly being replaced by awe. He'd given her his last piece of jerky in a canteen of water, pointed her in the direction of the distant mesas where her people made their winter camp, and had ridden away without a word. He'd never known if she'd made it. "You were a child," he said, his voice a rough rasp, unused to anything more than a command to his horse or a curse at a stubborn steer. A slow smile touched her lips, transforming her face. It was a smile of profound satisfaction, as if a long and arduous journey had just reached its destination. "My name is Liluye. It means singing hawk. I was a girl. I am a woman now." She swung her leg over the pinto's back and slid to the ground with a single liquid motion. She stood tall, her chin lifted. "I've returned to marry you." The hammer in Cole's hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. He let it drop to the dirt with a soft thud. The world tilted, the horizon seeming to dip and sway. Of all the things he had expected in his lonely life, drought, blizzard, Apache raids, the final welcome darkness, this was not one of them. "You're mistaken," he said, the words flat and hard. I'm not the marrying kind. You saved my life, she stated, as if it were the beginning and end of all argument. In the eyes of my people, a life saved is a life owed. My life has been yours since that day. I have spent these years preparing. I have learned your tongue. I have learned your ways. I have watched you from afar. The idea of being watched sent a chill down his spine that had nothing to do with the wind. That's not how it works in my world. I did what any man would have done. You don't owe me anything. You are wrong, she said, her certainty absolute. Another man would have ridden by. Another man would have seen a dead Apache child and thought it one less mouth to feed. You saw life, you honored it. Now I will honor yours. He shook his head, a deep, frustrated sigh escaping him. Listen, Liluye, I appreciate the sentiment, I truly do, but my wife is dead. My son is dead. The part of me that knows how to be a husband is buried with them on that hill. He gestured with his chin toward the two simple wooden crosses under the lone cottonwood tree near the cabin. I have nothing to offer you. Her dark eyes flickered to the graves, and for a moment a profound softness entered them. It was not pity, it was understanding. You offer a home. You offer a good heart, even if it is broken. A broken pot can still be used to carry water. You think your life is over. I am here to show you it is not. He laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. You can't just show up and declare we're to be married. That's insane. It is the most sane thing I have ever done, she replied, her voice unwavering. I will not sleep in your house until you invite me as your wife, but I will not leave. And she didn't. She made a small, neat camp just beyond the creek that bordered his pasture. It was a simple affair. A lean-to of canvas and fallen branches, a fire pit lined with river stones. She was a ghost on the edge of his vision. He would wake before dawn to see the faint glow of her fire. He would ride the fence lean and see her, a still figure, tanning a hide or weaving a basket. She never approached him again, but her presence was a constant silent pressure on the walls of his solitude. Days turned into a week. He tried to ignore her. He worked himself to exhaustion, falling into his cot each night with muscles screaming and his mind numb. But even in his dreams he saw her, a dark-eyed woman with an unshakable purpose. He found a perfectly cleaned and dressed rabbit left on his doorstep one morning. He threw it to the dog, then watched with a pang of guilt as the animal devoured it. The next day, he found a small pouch of fragrant herbs by his well. He recognized them as a remedy for the aches in his joints. He left it where it lay, but the scent of it followed him all day. She was not trying to charm him. She was demonstrating. She was showing him, in her silent, steady way, what she had said. She was a partner. She knew the land as intimately as he did, perhaps more so. She moved through it not as a conqueror, but as a part of it. The breaking point came with the sky. It had been a dry, hot summer. The grass was cured to the color of straw, and the air was thick with the threat of fire. Cole saw the smoke first, a smudge of dirty gray on the northern horizon. He'd seen it before, a lightning strike, a careless campfire. He saddled his horse, shouting for his ranch hand, a young man named Billy who lived in the bunkhouse. "Fire, Northridge, get the horses and drive the herd south to the river flats," he yelled. Billy, pale-faced, ran to do as he was told. Cole galloped toward the smoke, his heart a cold, hard knot. This was his life's work. This ranch was the only thing he had left. He wouldn't lose it. He rode hard, the smoke growing thicker, acrid in his throat. By the time he reached the ridge, the fire was no longer a smudge. It was a living, breathing monster, an angry orange beast roaring as it consumed the dry timber, pushed by a rising north wind. It was moving fast, too fast, straight for his valley, straight for his cabin, straight for the two graves under the cottonwood. A wave of utter despair washed over him. He was one man. Billy was just a boy. They couldn't stop this. He could save the herd maybe, but the cabin, the barn, everything he had built on the bones of his sorrow was about to be turned to ash. As he sat there on his horse, Paralyzed by the sheer, terrible scale of the Inferno, another rider appeared beside him. It was Liluye on her pinto. Her face was grim, her eyes narrowed as she assessed the fire's path. There was no fear in her, only a fierce, focused intensity. "The wind is turning," she said, her voice cutting through the roar. "It will push the fire down the eastern draw. It will be at your cabin before the sun is high." "I know," Cole bit out, his voice raw with fury and helplessness. "Get you. Our man. Tell him to take the cattle west, across the creek. There is a box canyon there. The rock walls will protect them." "How do you—" "I know this land," she cut him off. "Go. I will meet you at the cabin." Without waiting for a reply, she wheeled her pinto and galloped away, not from the fire, but parallel to it, a small, buckskin-clad figure against a wall of flame. For a second, Cole hesitated. Then, something in her absolute confidence, her lack of panic, broke through his despair. He had a plan, her plan. It was better than nothing. He spurred his horse and raced to find Billy. When he got back to the cabin, the air was thick and hot, raining ash like black snow. The roar of the fire was a constant, deafening presence. Liluye was already there. She had torn strips from a spare blanket and was soaking them in the water trough. "We will make a fire break," she yelled over the din, handing him a wet cloth to tie over his nose and mouth. "Your plow, we need it." For the next 2 hours, they fought. It was a primal, desperate battle. He drove the heavy plow horse, carving a wide, dark scar of earth in a semicircle around the cabin and the gravesite. Liluye followed behind him with a shovel and a wet sack, beating out the embers that leaped across the line, her movements economical and tireless. The heat was blistering, the smoke a suffocating blanket. Sweat poured down his face, stinging his eyes. His lungs burned. He lost track of time. There was only the creak of the harness, the grunt of the horse, the scrape of the plow blade, and the tireless, rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack of Liluye's sack against the smoldering ground. She was everywhere at once, a whirlwind of focused energy. Her face streaked with soot, her eyes burning with an intensity that matched the fire itself. The firefront hit their line like an ocean wave crashing on a rock. A wall of flame, 100 feet high, roared in fury, spitting embers and superheated air. Cole shielded his face with his arm, certain the cabin would ignite from the sheer heat. He risked a glance at Liluye. She stood her ground, feet planted, her wet sack held like a warrior's shield, her eyes locked on the base of the flames, watching for any that dared to jump their trench. And then, as suddenly as it had come, the main front passed. The roar subsided to a deep, angry crackle. The air was still searingly hot, and the world was a blackened, smoking ruin, but the cabin stood. The cottonwood tree was scorched but standing. The 2 crosses were untouched. They had won. Cole slid from the plow horse, his legs trembling with exhaustion. He stumbled over to the well and drank deeply, the cool water a balm to his scorched throat. He looked at the devastation. His grazing land was gone, a black, barren wasteland stretching to the horizon. But his home, the anchor of his memory, was safe. He turned and looked at Liluye. She was leaning against the well, her head bowed, her body finally admitting its fatigue. She had saved him, not his life this time, but his life's work, his past. He walked over to her. She looked up, her dark eyes meeting his in the smoky twilight. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a shared, bone-deep weariness. "My pasture is gone," he said, his voice quiet. "The grass will return," she answered softly. "The roots are deep. After fire, the land grows back stronger." He looked from the blackened earth to her soot-stained face. He saw the truth in her words, a truth that went far beyond grass and soil. He thought of the empty chair at his dinner table, the cold side of his bed, the endless silent conversations with ghosts. He'd been living in a scorched land of his own making for 10 years. He reached out and with a thumb, gently wiped a smudge of OT from her cheek. Her skin was warm, real, She did not flinch. She simply watched him, her breath catching almost imperceptibly. Sarah was her name, he said, the words feeling strange and new in his mouth. My wife, and Daniel, my boy. He had his mother's smile. A single tear traced a clean path through the grime on Liluye's cheek. It is a good thing to say their names, she whispered. He looked at the cabin, then back at her. He saw not a replacement for what he had lost, but a continuation, a new chapter. The land would heal. Maybe, just maybe, so could he. The nights are getting cold, Garrett said, his voice still rough but with a new timbre in it, something that had been absent for a decade. And my cabin is small, but there's room enough for two. Liluye's smile when it came was not one of triumph. It was as soft and as welcome as the first green shoot to push its way through the ashes. Yes, she said, there is.